On January 1st of this year, I stepped on the scale at 335 pounds. This week, I stepped on the scale at 255 pounds. That means in less than 7 months, I've lost 80 pounds. How did I do that? If you want to know, stick around. Hey, thank you for sticking around. My name's Ken. This is Losing in 2025, and I'd like to welcome you to the Week 29 update. So, I promised to tell you 10 things that I did that helped me to lose 80 pounds in less than 7 months. First, let me tell you what I didn't do. I did not take any type of weight loss medication. I also didn't undergo any kind of surgeries. And I didn't do what I would consider a fad diet. Now, what I did do, some might consider a fad diet. I don't think it is, but I'll let you be the judge, okay? So I did make a list for myself, some notes to make sure that I stay on track. Trust me, you'll be glad I did, because this could get out of hand real quickly if I let myself meander. But let's get right to it, shall we? Number one, the first thing I did is I recognized that I had a problem and that I was desperate to change. People have said to me on a number of occasions as I have been on this weight loss journey over these last 7 months or so, wow, you're so dedicated. And I'm like, no, I'm not dedicated. I'm desperate. I had to get desperate enough to change. I've needed to lose weight for a long time, but I was never desperate enough to make the radical changes in my behavior that I needed to make in order to accomplish the things that I wanted to accomplish. You know, there is a saying, and I've long believed that it's true, that small changes, minuscule small changes sustained over a long period of time can bring about great results. And I still think that's true, but I was a little more desperate than that. I wasn't willing to wait that long period of time. And so I recognized that if I wanted to see radical change in my life, then I needed to make radical changes to my life. And I was only willing to do that because I had reached a stage of desperation. I had been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. I'd been diagnosed with hypertension. I'd been told that I could have fatty liver disease and that there was even the possibility that I was looking at stage 1 heart failure. I'd spent a few days in the hospital. My doctors, were telling me that I had a lot of chronic conditions and they were wanting to, medicate for those. Some of them they did. I was placed on some medication to help regulate blood sugar and all of that. And so, things were getting serious. And I finally got to a point where I was desperate enough to recognize that I had a problem and to begin to change. So that's number one. I recognized that I had a problem and I was desperate to change that problem. So that was the first thing I did. The second thing I did was I identified some of the changes that I needed to make, and I considered the obstacles that were preventing me from making those changes. So as I thought about the fact that I needed to make radical changes, I began to think about what some of those were. I had a really bad relationship with food. I would overeat constantly. I would binge eat late at night. I was eating what I call a SAD diet, or a standard American diet, which was filled with processed foods, a whole lot of fast food, a lot of food that was prepared outside of the home, a lot of prepackaged things. Basically salt, fats, and sugars all the time. And I recognized that that was a problem. Now, I also needed to recognize, as I said here, that one of the obstacles to my changing that was, one, my eating habits, the things that I liked, the things that I had a desire to eat and enjoy. I'm also a social eater. I eat a lot in social settings and situations. And then I also binge eat. I would tend to be an emotional eater, and I would eat late at night. And so I had to recognize that changing my life in these significant ways was going to require that I plan for and overcome some of those. I needed to come up with a plan for how I was going to handle the desire to binge eat. I needed to come up with a plan for how I was going to address food when I found myself in a social setting or a social situation. So again, I had to identify some changes that I needed to make and consider the obstacles that were preventing me from making those changes. And at that stage, it was really about recognizing them and evaluating those challenges. It wasn't even about fixing them at that point. It was about taking stock of where I currently was, rather. And I did that. That was something that I did. I took a couple of months, really, to think through that assessing and planning process. For me, it was November and December of 2024 when I really spent a lot of time and energy doing some of the things in these first few steps. That brings me to number 3. So number 3 is this: I prayed that God would change my desires and that he would help me to want the things that were good for me. You see, I recognized that a lot of the things I wanted to eat were the things that were bad for me, and that a lot of the things that were good for me, things like garbanzo beans and broccoli and stuff like that, I just didn't enjoy them. I didn't like eating them. And so I recognized that there needed to be a shift in my desires. And there's a scripture that says that if we delight ourselves in the Lord, that he will give us the desires of our heart. I don't think that means that God's a genie in a bottle. I think it means that when we delight ourselves in the Lord, he can influence the things that we desire. When we choose to take pleasure in our relationship with God, when we seek him, and when we take pleasure in pleasing him, that he can change and will change our desires to align with his for us. And his desire is, I believe, that we would make healthy choices. I really think that that is something that he would desire. You know, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says that we're to trust in the Lord with all of our heart, lean not on our own understanding. In all of our ways acknowledge him, and that he will direct our paths. And I was at a point where I needed God to direct my path. I needed him to show me what I needed to do in order to accomplish the changes that needed to be made in my life. And so I began to pray that God would change my desires. Number 4, I researched and I gathered information from books, videos, online sources, and a health coach who happened to be my wife. She has a bachelor's degree in wellness and nutrition, and she has her health coaching certification from IIN. And she is an integrative nutrition health coach. And even though she hadn't seen any clients yet or started her business yet, well, she was certified. And so I told her, I said, hey, you can practice on me, right? I need some coaching. I need some help. And so we did research together. We read books. Specifically, she read a lot more than I did, but I read How Not to Die by Dr. Michael Greger, as well as How Not to Diet by Dr. Michael Greger. I'd already read Atomic Habits, so I had a little bit of knowledge regarding habit change, and I'd read The Power of Habit, and I'd read, Mindset, which really helped me recognize the way I needed to think about health change. I watched a lot of YouTube videos on how to start a plant-based diet, and I watched some of the others as well about other types of diets that you could try for the goals that I had, and we settled on the one that we felt was best for us. And so I did a lot of research and I gathered information, and I think that was an important part of the process. But I want to actually mention a caveat there. It's also important to make sure that researching isn't all that you do, right? Sometimes people get so wrapped up in research that they never actually start to try anything. You can always adjust as you go, but once you've done your research, it's time to get moving and get started on the program. Number 5, the 5th thing I did was I developed a SMART outcome goal and identified several input goals that would help me get moving in the right direction. So you probably already know what a SMART goal is, but just in case you don't, I'll mention the acrostic SMART, right? The S stands for specific. I needed a specific goal. The M stands for measurable. I needed to be able to measure my progress toward that goal. The A stands for achievable. It needed to be a reasonable goal. I couldn't expect to lose 100 pounds in 2 months. That just wasn't going to happen, right? So it needed to be achievable. The R, it had to be relevant. Well, losing weight was very relevant to me because I had a lot of chronic health conditions that were getting to develop. And so losing weight was a very relevant goal. And then time bound, it needed to be connected to a specific period of time. And so in relation to that, I came up with the output, with the output goal of losing 100 pounds in 2025. It was specific. I wanted to lose 100 pounds. It was measurable. There were ways in which I could measure that 100-pound weight loss, right? I could measure my progress toward that goal. It was achievable. 100 pounds in 1 year is about 2 pounds a week. It's really very achievable. That is a healthy rate of weight loss. It was relevant. I already mentioned why it was relevant to me because of the various chronic health conditions that I had. And it was timely. I made the commitment to do it within a 1-year time frame. So that was my SMART outcome goal. Now, what do I mean by outcome goals? An outcome goal is a goal that you set that is the result that you are wanting or expecting. And losing 100 pounds was the result that I wanted. Now, input goals are setting goals for things that you will do that will lead you toward that outcome goal. So input goals could be like, I'm going to track my food every day, or I'm going to have a caloric deficit each day, or I'm going to give up these foods and start eating those foods, or I'm not going to eat after a certain period of time. These are goals that influence the outcome, and they're things that you can directly control and that you can input, right? They're goals for what you're going to do. So I set very specific outcome goals, one very specific outcome goal, and a number of very specific input goals as well. So that was number 5. Number 6, I planned for and implemented a means of tracking a variety of metrics, not just my weight, but a variety of metrics that included but was not limited to my weight with daily weigh-ins, my fasting blood glucose level each morning, my caloric intake, and my macronutrients, and then eventually also my step count each day. So I knew that I needed to be able to track the various input goals that I had set for myself. And so I developed a plan and then implemented that plan regarding the tracking of those various metrics. Number 7, I recognized that I needed a vehicle for consistent accountability that would encourage me to regularly report on my progress and evaluate the effectiveness of my strategies and their implementation. And so what did I do? I started a YouTube channel. I started Losing It 2025 because, you see, I know me, and if I'm the only one that I'm responsible to, if I'm the only one that I have to report to, I'll make excuses. I'll delay. I'll give myself an exception. I'll have an extra cheat day here and there. But you see, knowing that every Wednesday, or at least pretty much every Wednesday, I was going to have to record a video like this one, a weekly update, in which I report to you, my dear viewers, whoever you may be, where I report to you what my progress has been like and what I did that resulted in that progress or lack thereof. That was going to hold me accountable. It also built into the whole process a time and a reason for reflection, to look at the metrics that I had gathered and to think about how those interacted with each other. If I saw that my weight was going up, well, was my step count going down? Or if I saw that my blood sugar was high, well, was I eating too many simple carbohydrates or candies? I could check the food that I had tracked in order to see that. So there developed this synergistic connection between the various metrics that I was tracking that I could then reflect upon and report to you in these videos. And knowing that I would have to do that each week helped to hold me accountable. So number 7 was recognizing that need for accountability and developing a system to have that consistently in my life. Number 8, now I didn't necessarily do this one in this order. This one actually probably came a lot earlier in the process, but as I was going through the list, this is when I thought of it. Number 8, I visited my doctor to have my labs done and to discuss any medical concerns that might need to be accounted for. And then I stayed in touch with my doctor as needed for additional tests and such. I actually just went to the doctor this last week, and I'm waiting on the test results even now. So I had hoped that they would be in before I recorded this video. They're not. Hopefully they will be soon. But tentatively speaking, my doctor has told me I probably am not going to have to take blood sugar medication any longer. In fact, I've already stopped taking that. And so we're waiting on the A1C numbers to confirm that I no longer need to do that. But for the time being, I'm not. And my blood sugar seems to be doing just fine. One of the many benefits of having lost 80 pounds this year. And so I want to go on record as saying, of course, I am not a doctor. I am not a nutritionist. I'm not even a certified health coach. Not yet, anyway. I'm kind of working on that. But anyway, yeah, so I'm not any of those things. So before you start a program of any kind, I really would encourage you to see your doctor. If nothing else, establish a baseline for your labs so that you know what your starting point is, and then you can see what the results are of your efforts and how it's working and how it's impacting your health, either positively or negatively, so that you can change if you need to. My doctor was pretty pleased. She actually said that she had myself and one other patient that were making such radical changes and seeing such great progress that we needed to be her poster children. So that felt pretty good. All right, so number 8 was visiting my doctor. We're getting close to the end. I'm making better time than I anticipated, so that's good. Number 9 is I increased my activity level, my movement, right? Primarily through walking, and then more recently with some light strength training. Initially, I raised my step goal to 10,000 steps a day in the month of April, and then to 20,000 steps a day in the month of June. I'm not doing 20,000 at this point, just from a time constraint. That was a little more than I could maintain and still keep the peace at home. My wife was absolutely sick of hearing me say, hey, I'm going to go for a walk. I'll see you in a couple of hours, right? So I do walk every day. I like to get my walks in the morning. If you watch the shorts on this channel, you've probably seen a lot of videos that I've recorded while walking. Right now, I'm averaging probably around 15,000 steps a day, and that's kind of the sweet spot. That's where I want to stay. So 15,000 steps a day. But yes, number 8 was I increased my activity level primarily through walking, and more recently by incorporating some strength training, which I plan to do more of as I move forward. So that was number 9. And finally, number 10. On January 1st of this year, I began a whole food plant-based diet that I have continued over the last 7.5 months. I initially said that I would do it for 90 days, and then at the end of that 90 days, I would evaluate my progress, see how I felt about it, and decide whether or not I wanted to continue on a plant-based diet. It was working great. I was feeling wonderful. The progress that I was seeing was fantastic. It really hadn't proved to be that difficult. And so, yeah, I've continued it for 7.5 months now. I want to be clear, I never claimed to be vegan, and I respect the perspective that the people who are vegans have. And because I respect it, I don't want to claim to be one. I mean, I eat honey. I could totally see myself at some point in the future maybe switching to like an ovo-vegetarian diet, or maybe a pescatarian diet, or at least maybe a flexitarian diet. If you want to know what those are, you can look them up on Google. They're great for that. But I could totally see myself switching to one of those. As I've mentioned in the past, I'm very mercenary in my choice of nourishment, and I am eating the foods that I need to eat in order to accomplish the purposes that I want to accomplish. That's what I'm doing. And it's working, and as long as it keeps working, that's what I'm going to keep doing. So that's the plan. So again, on January 1st, I began a whole food plant-based diet that I've continued over the last 7.5 months. And that has allowed me to stay nourished and satiated while maintaining a caloric deficit that was significant enough to result in an 80-pound weight loss. Now, people say, look, all you got to do is move more and eat less, right? That's all there is to it. People will say, you just have to maintain a caloric deficit. That's all there is to it. You maintain a caloric deficit and you're going to lose weight. Well, okay, that's fine. But one thing that I've learned is that not all calories are created equal. And I can have 100 calories worth of M&Ms, or I can have 100 calories worth of strawberries. And that 100 calories worth of strawberries is going to satisfy my hunger and provide more nutrients to my body to a much higher degree of satisfaction than the M&Ms are. The M&Ms taste good. Of course, we eat a lot of hyper palatable foods in our culture. But I've gotten to the point now where strawberries are sweet again, and it's wonderful. My taste buds have been rehabilitated through eating whole, natural foods. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I never eat anything that's processed. That would be untrue. I eat processed foods on occasion. I'll eat vegan fake meats on occasion. I have had 1 or 2 Oreos over the course of the last year, literally. I think it's been 1 or 2. But the point that I'm trying to make is this. It's not about being 100% faithful, never making a mistake on the diet that you're on. It is about transitioning to a lifestyle that centers around good, whole, healthy, satisfying, nutrient-rich foods that are going to satisfy your hunger and are also going to satisfy your body's need for nutrition. That's what I have discovered through eating a whole food plant-based diet. So look, these, and I've got notes here, I'm going to read this because I stay on track here. These were not the only things that I did, okay? There were certainly other things that I did and that I included in my plan, things like frequent reflection, adjusting as needed, changing my eating habits and my relationship with food, as well as participating in an online community of like-minded people, not to mention the support and encouragement of my wife and my health coach, who happen to be the same person, and the prayer support of my church family. All of those things and so much more contributed to my weight loss. And the reality is I'm not done yet. My goal is to lose 100 pounds in 2025, and so far, I've lost about 80, and depending on the day, it could be 78 or 81. It fluctuates, right? But I'm moving in the right direction. I've got about 20 to 25 pounds to go to hit my goal of 100 pounds in 2025. I do not doubt for a moment that I'm going to achieve that goal, and I'm already starting to think about what goals come next for me. For instance, I can definitely say that once I get to my initial goal weight of 235 pounds, that is still too heavy for my height. I'm 6 foot tall. According to the charts and the BMI stuff, I should weigh about 180. So at 35 pounds, I still have about 55 pounds to go before I am in what is considered a normal weight range. Whether or not I actually strive for that number remains to be seen. We're going to have to wait and see how I feel when I get down below 235. I do know this though, 235 is still too heavy. Technically, 235 pounds for someone of my age and height is still considered obese, and I don't want to be obese. I was morbidly obese. I don't even want to be normally obese, right? I want to be in a healthy weight range. Now, whether that's 180 pounds or whether that's 200 pounds or 205 pounds, a lot of that is going to depend on my body composition. But the one thing I recognize is that once I get to that 235 pound mark, I am by no means done. I'm still going to have more weight to lose. I'm still going to have more fitness goals. I'm going to have other goals that I look forward to sharing with you that are not directly fitness related. My hope is that maybe by that time I'll be able to help you if you're interested in making these kind of changes, at least by telling you what I did and what worked for me, and by encouraging you to search out and to apply the things that are going to work for you. Yeah? Does that sound good? Sounds good to me. So, the 10 things that I shared with you today are recognizing that I had a problem and that I was desperate to change, identifying some of the changes that I needed to make and considering the obstacles that were in my way, praying for God's assistance, researching and gathering information, developing smart input and output goals, planning for the implementation of tracking through a variety of metrics, recognizing that I needed a vehicle for consistent accountability, which turned out to be YouTube, visiting my doctor and getting their feedback and input on the plan that I was developing, increasing my activity level, and of course, starting a whole food plant-based diet. Of those 10 things, is there one that you'd like to know more about? Is there anything you'd like more details on? I'll tell you what, if you would like to know more about any of those 10 topics, let me know in the comments and let's have a conversation about it. I would love to talk with you about my experience thus far about my plans moving forward, and I'd be happy to encourage you as you work towards making the changes that you need to make in order to be the healthiest version of yourself. Thanks for taking the time to hang out with me today. Sun's starting to set. It's about time for me to wrap this up, go inside, edit this video, and post it. I'm just really excited. I'm really excited about everything that has happened so far. I'm grateful to the Lord, to my family, to those of you who've been with me on this journey so far, and I'm very eager to see what comes next. Thanks again for watching. Please subscribe and comment if you haven't already, and have a great day. God bless you.